Okay. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for coming to the first session of the day of the last day of Cisco Live. I really appreciate that people showed up after going to the concert and everything last night. So this is great. I'm here to talk to you about the Cisco developer community. My name is Paul Zimmerman. I manage the developer community engagement team with Cisco's DevNet crew. And before I get into the developer community, first I'll give you a little bit of information about myself. I joined Cisco back in 1998, a long time ago, back when we had this fine logo. Worked in a couple different areas. When I joined the iOS team, I launched my first experience with collaborative community platforms when we launched the Cisco Doc Wiki, where we were able to share and collaborate on content with customers and partners and the general public. It was a great experience for sure. I got more into developer content over the years. In 2014, I joined DevNet, and then, but we still managed the developer community, so we started using it as a support channel. Earlier this year, we really decided to make a bigger effort at making our community more engaging and inclusive. So this year, we started the developer community engagement team. So I'm happy to come be here and talk to you about it. All right, so what is the Cisco developer community? Developers love being part of a community. GitHub has millions and millions of developers that are collaborating with each other. Stack Overflow has 14 million developers that are trying to find answers. Our Cisco developer community has over 50,000 unique visitors a month on average. So it's an active place to be. Besides the forums and community like that, developers love to get together both virtually and in live. There's hackathons and meetups and conferences like this. So developers really like to have this feeling of community. Why is that? Well, they like to share knowledge. They like to find answers to questions, so sometimes they come for support reasons. They like to network with each other. They like to connect and maybe find out about jobs or new tools. They like to learn and build their skills. And they really come here often for inspiration. They want to find out about a new piece of code or are curious about direction of a way that some APIs are going. So it's a really good place to come and just connect with other developers. All right. So a little bit about the Cisco developer community itself. We have our community here on the Cisco communities, so it's with a lot of the other support communities that you'll find. We have really popular communities. Developer collaboration is our most popular. People are there talking about contact center stuff like Finesse, call manager APIs like JTAPI and Axel. We have a developer networking community where people are coming and talking about SD-WAN and Yang tools. It's a really good place to connect. We also have some of our newer technologies. We have things like Cloud Native, which we launched earlier this year. Really trying to build some more engagement and some excitement there. Things like the Sandbox have a really active community as well, where people are asking questions, providing new ideas for sandboxes. Really good place to come with all these different topics that we're covering. I turned my notifications off, but they're still showing up. And our community is pretty popular already. As a part of the community engagement, I certainly would like to get more people here, but we already get a pretty good, some pretty good engagement. We get a number of eyes on our community with an average of 68,000 monthly visits. We have 51,000 monthly unique visitors on average as well. So lots of people coming in and asking questions. 500 monthly new posts on average. So there's new content coming up there all the time. And we're working to even bring more to that. Besides our English community, there's some other language communities that are getting popular. We have a Japanese community where they've been talking about DevNet for a while. Earlier this year, we launched a Spanish developer community. It's actually gotten a lot of excitement going on. As a matter of fact, they have this newsletter that they recently posted. You can view it either by going to the QR code or the bit.ly address up there at top. They cover all the new topics that are coming out in their community, a lot of the new content and things like that, so that's exciting. As I mentioned earlier, though, it's not just about community forums. So we have a chat room that's really has a lot of community engagement going on. We have partners and outside people that are providing answers and connecting with people on a real-time basis. We are social media. I know that a lot of you are actually watching this through our social media channels, so of course that's a great way to connect with developers. And then of course live events like Cisco Live here at the DevNet Zone, or virtual events. I know some of you are attending Cisco Live virtually, so that's another way, that's a great way to connect. So I gave you a little bit of background on what our community is, but to build engagement, really having a more inclusive community is really going to help us build that aspect of it. One of the great things about having a diverse community is that you can really build dynamic conversations. We get people of all sorts of different experience levels. We have students and subject matter experts. We have engineers and salespeople. We have people for all different levels of experience. Different geographic experiences help build a more dynamic conversation too. Maybe someone has living in a place where they have strange infrastructure or government restrictions on their communications. It all feeds into a more dynamic conversation, as well as cultural dimensions. If we look at the Hofstede scale, which includes things like risk tolerance and individualism versus collectivism, those cultural dimensions play a key role in building dynamic conversations. Oh, go away. I'm really sorry about these notifications. I turned it off. All right. So we really want to foster collaboration in the community, and doing that, we can we really want to have more inclusive communities. We do that by building trust and having it where people can feel safe in the community. This is done. We can do this by having some good moderation policies to make sure that people are not only getting their answers, but also are being treated well in the community and are building levels of respect with each other. Another aspect of building an inclusive community is recognizing our awesome contributors. So all of these aspects really help build a more inclusive community. In Shore's paper about inclusion and diversity in work groups, I really found this as a useful model in trying to build inclusion. Oh, good Lord. Sorry, guys. Sorry, all. Uniqueness and belongingness are kind of some of the ways that we can look at how a community can be inclusive. If a community has a low uniqueness and a low belongingness, you can see that people are excluded from that community. People do not value their input. If we have a high value in uniqueness in the community but a low belongingness, then we have some individuals that stand out and are good contributors, but we're not really having an inclusive community where everyone's participating. If we have a low value and uniqueness in the community and a high belongingness, then we're not really getting dynamic conversations where everyone's thinking the same thing. You just don't have that dynamic connection going on. So really, we want to value uniqueness in a high way and also value belongingness, which creates a more inclusive community where everyone can participate. I just wrote a blog about this. It was posted yesterday. So if you go to blogs.cisco.com, you can see a little bit more information about that. The QR code will take you there, or you can go to blogs.cisco.com, and it's one of the early ones. It's one of the most recent ones in the developer blog area. As I mentioned before, recognition is a key part of making sure that people are being recognized for their efforts in the community, and we really want to encourage people to do that. One of the ways that we recognize people right now is with the Community Spotlight Awards. So we have a Developer of the Month Spotlight. We look at people who have either given some really helpful replies in the community or have distinguishing posts. Maybe they have a high number of kudos for that month that they've received or solutions accepted. Those all are aspects of how we decide who's a Community Spotlight of the Month winner. What does that give you? Well, it gives you recognition in the community, but it also is a stepping stone to some of these other programs. So the Cisco's designated VIP program is for the overall Cisco communities. All the communities nominate people for that. And that is a great program. As a matter of fact, the Cisco VIPs get free passes to Cisco Live, so it's very encouraging to try to get that recognition. The developer team also has some recognition. We've done DevNet Creator Awards, and we're working on new programs to also help recognize our champions and build a more recognition into our program. So what can you do to be more active in the community? Well, of course, visiting the community is a good first step. So go over to communities.cisco.com. I'll give you some more information on that in a second. And check it out. Look at the technologies that you're interested in or the topics that you're interested in and dive in. Ask some questions. If you have good answers, answer some questions. That is great. Share your experiences. People love to hear the stories of what you're doing, and it really helps inspire them in moving forward. And help build your reputation. Not only are the recognition programs something that you can strive for, but just building your reputation in the community can help you meet other people, can help build your network, can help showcase your skills and things like that. So come there and please participate. So here's how you can get there. We have a pretty long URL there. You can navigate to it from the communities, but we do have a shortened URL, so cs.co/developer-community. Also, this QR code will get you right there. So come here, please participate. We would love to have you join us and talk more and work through any questions you might have. Thank you very much. I hope to see you at the community, and enjoy the rest of your time at Cisco Live. Yeah. Please. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
And then when you get a chance, if you go back to the slide about your blog that you wrote, I would love to.
Oh, yeah.
As well.
Yes, yes. Thank you.
I wanted to ask, you've been involved in this community for quite a number of years. Do you know anyone deaf in this program thus far?
That is a great question.
That I know of, so far I'm the only one. But I don't see anyone involved in this that's really deaf too. So
I am not really aware right now of that. I'd love to make it more, if there's topics and stuff that you would be helpful. I think that they're probably, I mean, with 50,000 people come there every month, I think that there's probably some people out there that do, have those, have to deal with that as well. So,
yeah,
love to get your voice in there.
yeah, I know several hearing who know sign language. They're involved in the developer community. But I was wondering if there are any that were actually deaf, or if I would just be the only one. I wasn't sure if you knew of anyone. So.
I don't know, but I would love to have your voice in there.
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah, deaf or hearing, it doesn't matter. I would love to be part of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if you knew anyone. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I look forward to seeing more from you.
Great, thank you so much.
Good. Hi, everyone. The session is why everyone should learn how to code. I'm Denise Kwan. I'm a software engineer and a developer advocate here at DevNet. If you wanted to connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn, I'm Denise T. Kwan. So a little bit about me, just to give a little background. I'm actually a full stack software engineer that now I'm a developer advocate on software development and trying to teach people how to code. I have 15 years of experience building a lot of the enterprise software applications here at Cisco, and I do a ton of coding languages. I started with C++, doing Java, Python, and lots of everything you can think of. Again, you can connect with me at Denise T. Kwan. Feel free to, ask me questions offline or, whatever floats your boat. So a lot of people get this idea that if you learning how to code, it's just for engineers. I want to be an engineer, so I'm going to learn how to code. But I don't really, in my opinion, I don't think that that's the right mindset, especially now as you see we're trying to teach a lot of the kids how to code in the STEM programs. And I think, with coding, the popularity, at least in our day and age, it was actually introduced for a lot of people in a later age, and they just see it as, okay, if you want to be a software engineer, you learn how to code. Everybody else shouldn't touch it. But in my opinion, I think that isn't really necessarily true. What are the benefits of coding? Since I said it's for everyone, I'm going to focus on things, life skills, things that you will benefit from coding that people don't typically think of. I mean, of course, learning how to code, you're going to write applications, all of that. That's pretty straightforward. But in my opinion, things is problem solving, logic, creativity, communications, and then, of course, we're the DevNet zone, we're at Cisco, of course, automation. So I can't go without touching upon that. So let's talk about problem solving, right? Problem solving is the way by which solutions are developed to remove an obstacle from achieving an ultimate goal. We problem solve every day in our life, right? When you wake up, you got to go and problem solve. You got to think about what you're going to do. You got to do all of that. And that's something that not everybody just naturally is able to know how to problem solve. We got to learn that as we're going through. And when you're learning how to code, you're put into the spot of actually needing to problem solve, because whenever you want to go do something to code, you don't just do whatever coding. What's the purpose? The purpose, there's some sort of use case, even if it's as simple as I want to print out hello world. Well, you got to figure out how you're going to do it. What coding language are you going to use? What is the method that you're going to use to be able to get there? So it's a critical skill for everybody, and that's something that is helpful for you to build. So like I said, nowadays the kids do STEM programs, and there's lots of different applications that allow the kids to play with things. So if I just took this screenshot from code.org. This is a lesson that's for, I believe it's ages 4 to 7. So definitely not anything high level. But what are you doing when you're problem solving here? You need to go get Scrat from Ice Age across the ice to get this acorn. And as you probably know, he didn't get his acorn in every single episode until recently, when the studio shut down and they just needed to give him his acorn. But, most people will be like, the simple way is just to get across. So when you code that, and again, code.org is meant for kids, so it's really just dragging and dropping. And we can say, repeating 5 times, you're going to go east, so he can go straight here to get the acorn. But there's also other ways to get there, right? You don't have to go that path. So there's another way that he can do it. We will all say, hey, that's probably not the smartest way to go, but he can go around and come back down. But ultimately, what he needed to do was to get the acorn. Both options actually worked, because at the end of the day, he still got his acorn. So when you're thinking about coding, you got to think about how do you get to the end result, but also what is the best way to get to the end result. And so that way, when you're coding, you're really trying to do that problem-solving skills. Next, we have logic. So from a computer science point of view, we're trying to assess what is the the strict principles of validity. Which way, what are the options in every point of your code? And just like problem solving, it's something that we got to do every day. Logic, right? You got to logic. You know, how many times have you say, that wasn't a logical reason, or that's like, how did you get there? And so not everybody has the same set of logic, and logic is very important in our everyday life. So if you even just think about it, if we're at a signal light, right? You got to go and you're driving. When you get to a red light, you have to decide what you're going to do. Well, if it's red, you're going to stop, hopefully. If it is green, you're going to go. But then, now you got to think about it. If it's yellow, do you go through or do you stop? Well, it really depends if you are close to the signal light, if you're far, how long has it been yellow? And so all of those decisions that you're making is all the logic that's going on. And so when you're coding, you're thinking about this, you're practicing these life skills. Next, we say creativity. A lot of people don't consider coding as creativity for whatever reason. Most people think that, oh, that's very creative. You're thinking about artistic or, you know, like modern art or whatever the case. And so I'm gonna plug a little that I told my daughter I need some image for my slide. Can you draw me something for my creativity slide? And she likes to draw on the iPad. So this is actually drawn by her. She's 8 years old, and I thought that it would be cute to go put this in because I said, give me something, and it just worked. So creativity in the sense of an art form, creativity we could talk about from a coding level, right? When you're coding, it is up to you on how you're going to design this. Software development and coding, you got to design it before you start coding. And that designing is the same type of creativity as you would think in the same from an art form. You got to think about how you're going to draw it, how you're going to code it. So, you know, it's something that people don't necessarily associate with coding, but you have many ways of doing it. So mobile games is pretty obvious, right? When you're creating a mobile game, it's cool, it got graphics. It's almost from, in my point of view, like an artistic kind of creativity. Then websites, the one that I like, and I actually heard another one just recently, when COVID hit, all of these different countries, states, and counties were giving out information. And the information, all that data of how many cases, how many people were, being, were dying from it, all of that. And it was all over. And all that data was being given from an API. So what, and I know a lot of different people did it, but the first one that was really in the news was that there was this 17-year-old high school student that was struggling on and wanted to see all this data. So he decided to be creative, take all these APIs and built this website for everybody to see all the data in one. So it was his creativity and his to come up with what he wanted to present in his website. Nobody told him that he needed to do this. Nobody told him how to do it. Nobody said, oh, the UI needed to be this way. He just decided, hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to put it together. So it's him trying to put this all together. And so there's a lot of creativity involved with this. Mobile apps kind of in a similar way. I had many, many friends creating mobile apps, and they were able to design what they wanted to do. And so in my view, software design and designing what you are going to code is similar to artistic design, and most of the time creativity is, you know, it's labeled for that. And then the obvious, this was always my goal as a software developer. I had always wanted to work for Pixar. It didn't end up happening since I'm here at Cisco. But, you know, you get to do graphic arts and do CGI, right? That's all coding, but you get that same feel as if you were drawing. Next I had on the list was communication. You know, we have software engineers, but many people don't realize that software engineers can't create an application by themselves. They can't create a product by themselves. they need marketing, they need a PM, they need a lot of different roles. And in order to communicate with the software engineers, and in order to work together as a team, it's better to be on the same page. Because if I speak Cantonese, and if I did this presentation in Cantonese, I'm pretty sure most or all of you guys won't understand what I'm saying. And it would be meaningless. So when you are on the same page, being able to communicate and talk to each other, then you have better empathy, you have better understanding. So there are many different roles that people have that work with software engineers. And so for example, my husband does HR, and he originally did HR for retail. So he had nothing, all he knew about tech was the fact that I was an engineer and that's it. He didn't really, get into any of that. And then he became HR for a tech company, and he was supporting the engineers. And he's like, what is Agile? What is these coding languages? What is a Scrum? And I'm like, I think it's time for you to learn how to code a little bit and learn these terms and these aspects. And so I pulled out some of my stuff and I made him learn. I actually used some of our DevNet stuff, and then he got just the basics. And we're not talking about, you need to go build some app or something, just the basics of it. And now he has a better understanding when he talks to these software engineers about their struggles, when they talk about Scrum, or when they need to recruit for people of what they need, what is C++, what is Java, and what is the expectation. And so when we're able to communicate and we're all on the same page, it's just a better understanding between everybody. And then lastly, we have to touch about automation. I mean, that's what we're all about here at DevNet. But we're not saying that in your jobs you need to automate. There's so many things that we do, especially now with IoT. We have all of these smart devices out there that even for me, I have the Arlo system in my house. And in order to go set up notifications, you got to decide, hey, when there's a motion detected at a certain time or during this time period, then I want an email or a notification, or I want this. And so if you really think about it, those are all logic. That's technically coding in a simple form. And there's many examples of automation, not from what we're going to say because we're here at Cisco, of network automation and all of that. We're trying to talk about high level of things. I know that there's smart lights. And hey, wouldn't it be cool that the lights turn on your own time? You can automate a lot of these systems. You come back from a big vacation and you have 1 billion files of photos. I want to go and rename them all. And yes, there's all these little tools, but what if the tools didn't do exactly what you want and you want to bulk rename? You can automate that as well. A business sending a text message to customers for their order, especially nowadays where you have curbside pickup and whatnot. Generating reports and getting tech. This is for if you guys have seen any of our stuff, my colleague Quinn, who likes to do stuff around barbecue, where he has a smart thermometer so that he can track his barbecue grill so that he knows how to get the perfect meat. And so a lot of times people just think, coding, I'm just going to go build an application. But honestly, we have a lot of these things in our everyday lives and things that can help us. And so automation doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go and do something very scientific. It could just be something that will help you from your everyday life. And so, coding is one of those things, and it might seem scary, but there are a lot of different tools of how to learn how to code. So what's next? Well, here in developer.cisco.com, here at DevNet, we do have our learning labs, and they're self-paced tutorials that you can do on your own time. And we have stuff related to Cisco, and we have stuff related to networks. But we also have this coding series that is called Coding APIs. And you can find that on developer.cisco.com. And we have different tracks. And so we do have hands-on aspects of it. And with our new Learning Lab experience, it comes with an IDE and a terminal built into the browser. And that allows you to learn and do all of this coding stuff without actually installing anything on your computer. Because we know that doing all of the prerequisites of, oh, I got to go download an IDE. Oh, I got to go and download Postman if I want to make an API request. And people just get scared off by all of that. So we built in an IDE and a terminal into the browser so everything can be done within the browser and on your own time and at your own pace. So your progress will be stored and you can just go and do it on your own pace. And it's not just hands-on, there's a lot of information about it, so there's a lot of learning, and so that's a good place to start. If that still scares you, I know that this is for children, but I actually enjoy playing with these things myself. But code.org is catered towards kids, but as you saw on my previous slide, it's really just a drag and drop, so you don't even have to think about syntax and any of that stuff. I know that, some people might be thrown off with the kid stuff, but it's actually quite fun. There's a lot of different things on code.org for people to do and this will teach you, that problem solving, the logic, the creativity, and you'll be able to get all of that stuff just by playing around with the different steps. And it's actually quite fun. Because my daughter does it, then I'm always like, oh, let me go in and play with it a little bit more. So yeah, that's what I had, and I hope that that information motivates you or inspires you to start dipping into a little bit of coding. Obviously, I've done it for quite some time, and I definitely think that there's a lot of gain for learning at least just the basics. Thank you. heading out, so it was good to meet you
Test.
in person.
Is it okay?
And
Okay, cool.
this is why I love Cisco Live.
Hello.
you're not gonna like. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Audio in your presentation?
Sorry?
Is there any embedded audio in
No.
your presentation? Okay,
No.
perfect.
We already scanned.
Sound is on? Okay. Thank you and welcome for coming. And I hope you have enjoyed yesterday's celebration, and it was good. But after nights like these, we usually need a tool like NSO to help us to make configurations on our infrastructure, because we can automate them and then just with one click deploy them. So in this session, it's only 20 minutes, so you can scan this QR code, and I've prepared a great workbook for you, and with everything from the installation to the use of NSO and a lot of stuff that I cannot cover from the scratch today. And if you have any question, let me know, and I will get in touch with you. So let's go. So does anyone know here what is the default port of WebUI of NSO? Yes? 8080. OK, thank you. So if I go to the localhost 8080, this is the login screen of NSO. So we have the default username and password that you will find in the workbook as well. And this is the first thing that you will see once you get into the NSO WebUI, OK? We have our commit manager, configuration editor, device manager, service manager, alarm manager, dashboard. And now, in this version, we all can manage our high availability cluster from the WebUI as well. So first things first, we have the dashboard. From the dashboard, we can see all the alarms of our devices, the devices that we have connected, the NAD that each device is associated with. You already know what is a NAD? OK, so the NAD, just going very quickly, it works like, for NSO, like a driver works for our computer to our peripherals, right? So our computer needs a driver to know how to access these mouse functions, and NSO needs a NAD to access the device functions, OK? So at the moment, we have 2 iOS CLIs and 4 iOS XR devices. And we can go to the main page of the NSO WebUI by clicking on the Cisco logo, or we can use this bottom bar, OK? So first things first, let's start with the device manager. So we have 6 devices here. We can try to connect to one, and we get a red sign. So it means that it's not possible to make this connection. When this happens, NSO automatically creates one alarm, OK? And this happened because, at the moment, I'm using NetSims. So this will be the few times that you will see the CLI today. So NetSims is a functionality that NSO brings, so you can simulate devices. And if you want to apply configurations to the simulated devices before applying to the real devices, you can do it through the NetSims, OK? So while our devices are starting, we can go to the alarm manager here on the bottom. And you will see that we have here the device that we tried to connect, and it failed. And it says it's a major error. And if we go inside the alarm that we got, we can see what is the error that these alarms generated, what is the device, and we can see the last time that this error happened for this device as well. So NSO correlates these errors into this alarm specifically, OK? So all of our devices already started. If we go to the device manager again, we try to connect to the device. It returns green, so devices are ready to use. And now you tell me, Jorge, but I don't want to click one by one just to see if they are OK. So if we click on this small button, we select all the devices. And on the top right side, you have this running man. And you can click on Connect and apply actions to all the devices at the same time, OK? So all the devices are good. So let's do one of the main functions of NSO, the Checksync. This Checksync will see if the device configuration that NSO knows about the device and the actual device configuration is the same. At the moment, it is. So let's see this Checksync in action. So I told you that with NetSims, we can simulate the devices. So if I do NCS netsim CLI-C, so I connect to the CLI of the device, and I can choose iOS XR 0. I am inside of the CLI of the simulated device. I will make a configuration. So this actually gives us the feeling of the actual CLI of the device. So for example, I want to configure the IPv4 of this loopback interface. So I will do IPv4 address 1.1.1, 255, 255, 255. So I do the commit. Oops. It even gives us the errors as well. So I do the commit. Commit is complete. So now I simulated the action of someone going inside the device and making a change. When we add the device to NSO, the idea is to have that device managed always by NSO. But if someone make a change out of NSO, we have this Checksync. And this Checksync will tell us that someone have made the change outside of NSO. We got a red sign. So if we click on the compare config, we get a diff, like in a GitHub, of what was done outside of NSO. And now we can make a decision. Do we want to keep this configuration? If yes, we make a sync from. And it will pull this new configuration and save it in NSO database. If we do a sync to, it will work like a rollback. So imagine someone went to SSH to the device to do some troubleshooting and now wants to roll back everything. Can just do a sync to, and it will replace the configuration to the last NSO non-configuration. Let's do a sync from, so we can prove that the configuration was pushed to NSO. So I did a sync from. Now, if I do the check sync, all is green. So if I go to the device, this is the way that we configure the devices using NSO Web UI. So usually in the CLI world, you type the command, you do the tab. Here, you scroll down, and you have these tiles to make the configurations. So for example, if the address of the device change, you just need to change the IP address here. So I want to go to that configuration mode. You can see we can change the host name here. We can scroll down to go to the specific thing that we want to configure, or we can use this top bar, and we got the hints. So for example, I want to change the interface. We can see the loopback 0 that we just created. And if I want to go to the IPv4 and address, you will see this is the address that we have configured via the CLI. Okay? If I change this address, it's easy as this. So we change the value, and we get a green bar. This green bar means that NSO created a candidate configuration. So we can make like 100 changes to our infrastructure. And when we feel that we are ready to apply the changes to the device, we hit commit. Okay? So I can even make a change here to the description. I can say test. And nothing of this will be pushed to the device until we say. So if we go to the commit manager, we can see here the changes that we have done. This is the path. I will explain you later what it is. If I go to the config, I get the same diff that I got before. It's like a GitHub diff. And if I want to see the commands that will be sent to the devices, NSO shows us as well via the native configuration. Okay? So I hit the commit button. I say, yes, I want to commit and apply these changes to my devices. And the commit is done, and we created a rollback. Every time that we do a commit in the NSO, we create a rollback file. So if we want to roll back the IP address change that we just have done, I click on the load and save, and I have access to all the rollbacks that I have in my infrastructure. So if I click on this one, I click load, I go to the config, you will see that this description that we just added through NSO and the IP address change, they will be rollback. As easy as clicking commit, and it's done. Okay? So now you tell me, okay, Jorge, I still don't see any advantages here. So how do we apply templates or a number of configurations to our devices? For that, we need the configuration editor. So if we click here on the configuration editor, we can click twice because we were already in one path. We have the packages. This is a service package that we will see after, and we have our NADs, okay? Actually, NSO only knows at this time how to connect to iOS devices and iOS XR devices. So if I want to apply a template of configuration to a group of devices, I just need to go to this module, the NCS devices. You have here some templates that I've already created. For example, this ACL default will apply an ACL to a device. So for example, if I come to the device manager, I choose the iOS CLI. And then I will have here some blue buttons. And one of them says Apply Template. In this Apply Template, I will choose the ACL default. And I will scroll down, and I will click Run Apply Template Action. It returns OK. So if I go to the Commit Manager, I just applied this ACL to this device with just these clicks. Okay. This is good, but now we want to apply configurations not only to one device, but to a group of devices. So if I go to the configuration editor again, I go to the NCS devices, and I have already created here some groups of devices. So we have the iOS CLI with our iOS devices. I have here our iOS XR, which includes our iOS XR devices. And then I included the group which says all the devices. So it includes the both groups that I've created. So, for example, if I have a change that I want to apply to all my infrastructure, I can do it as easy as this. So one of the changes that I want to apply to this group is some VTP configuration and some domain configuration as well. So I go to the Apply template. I select the template that I've created. I scroll down to the Run Apply action. All the devices were affected. So if I go to the Commit Manager, I can see that all the devices, they will be configured with the domain action, and the VTP is missing by the moment in the template, but we can add it after. And you will see in the workbook, for those who joined late, we have a workbook with all of these that we are creating here. And I will give you the GitHub link in the end. So I hit commit. And all of these changes will be applied. In this case, the domain changes will be applied to all the devices with just these clicks. Okay? So this was good. But now I want to show you how we can prevent some configurations to be done by some users. So if we go to the configuration editor, we go to the AAA and authentication, users, and here is where you can add users. NSO allows you to use local users, allows you to make external authentication as well with LDAP, Radius, TACAX, everything that you have in your infrastructure. So I have added here a read user. And now our idea is to make this read user only a read user, so it can see the device configurations but cannot make any change. So how do we do that? We need to create an ACM rule. So if we go to the configuration editor, we have a module which is an ACM. Okay. We have here a rule list. If we go inside to this rule, the read rule, we have here the read group. The read group contains all the users that we want to be considered as read users or monitor users. So if we want to create a rule, the rules are for the NSO actions, and the CMD rules are more for the system actions brought from the NSO. Today, I will just only cover the rules. So if I say allow read only, I create the rule. I say deny, and now I want to deny all the write operations. So how we can know what are the write operations? We click on this button, and we have the info of what we can configure in each tile. So I will just copy all the operations that we can do through NSO, and I will say that I want to deny the execution, the delete of configurations, the update of configurations, and the create of configurations. But now we need a path. How do we get this path? So this is the path that we exactly want to apply this rule. So if we go to the device manager, we click in one device, you can see that when we go to the device, we are in a path, okay? So if I can just copy this. For example, I want to all the devices, okay? I copy this path, I go to the NACM rule, read rule, I open the rule, data node, I copy the path that I just got it. In the workbook, you have the other way to see and a more specific way to see how you can get the paths. So I will say, I want this user to only have read access to the device section. I will do a commit. And now let's try to go to that user. So I log out, read user, and if this user goes to the device manager, you will be able to see the devices. But you can see here that all the tiles are blocked just for reading, okay? So if I try to go to the configuration, interface, we can see here the interfaces. We can even try to delete, but NSO does not allow because of this rule, okay? So the last thing that I want to show you, and one of the most important ones, I'll go back to the admin, is the service manager. So with the service manager, we can apply templates and be sure that templates are there all the time. So for example, I have here one NTP configuration that I want to apply to the devices. And let me say server 1.2, 172, 16, 34, 16, 22, 33, and peer address 192, 68, 11, 12. OK. So this service, and in the workbook I explain you step by step how you can create it, are configurations that you want to apply to the devices, and you want to define some input parameters. So for example, if some operator is trying to apply a peer address, and you define a specific range of addresses that you want to allow to configure, you can define them in the Yang model. So for example, if someone tries to configure some string, it will output that the value is not allowed. So now I will add the devices that I want to add this configuration. So for example, these two iOS XR devices. And if I go to the commit manager, to the config, I see that the NTP configuration was added as simple as this. And what is the main goal of this service? Is that you can checksync if the configuration is still there or not. So if you create a service for an ACL, you can see that if that ACL is there all the time, and you are sure that you are not creating holes in the network while someone did the troubleshooting. So for example, if I go to one of these two devices, if I go to the device manager, iOS XR1, and I delete this NTP configuration, for example, let me delete the peer address. I do the commit. Now I go to back to the service manager, and I can check sync if the configuration is on the devices or not. So if I do the redeploy dry run, I will get the same diff if the configuration is present on the devices or not. And with just one click, we can just redeploy, and our infrastructure is safe, consistent, and healthy. I think it was all for today. It was very fast-paced. It's a lot of work. But in this PowerPoint, for those who were not present at the start, you have a GitHub link, which includes the workbook of this session. And you can go through the installation, to the configurations, to the service creation of everything in NSO. If you have any question, please let me know. If not, this is it. I'm Jorge Mira, and I'm Customer Success Specialist for Cross-Domain Automation in Cisco. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Thank you. It's good. Hello.
All right. Hello, guys. Good morning. How are you? Cool. All right. So my name is Riccardo, or you can call me Rick. I'm a technical marketing engineer for the Cloud and Compute Business Unit, and I work on Intersight Cloud Orchestrator. So this is not going to be like a beginner session, so I'm kind of assuming that you already know what Intersight is. So let's talk together about building custom automation with ICO. All right, so as usual, you can submit your questions using the app. You know the drill, right? So I'm going to just go ahead. And for the next 15 minutes or so, we're going to cover a little bit on the ICO kind of framework, a little bit overview how you can use tasks, what are executors, and so on. Then we're going to go ahead and show a little demo on how you can create custom tasks, so reusable piece of automation that you can use as they were native within the platform. And then we're going to have a very brief discussion on when to use each one of those executors. All right, so these slides contain basically everything I want to share today, right? So 3 main points, which is what you have to kind of keep in mind when you work with ICO. So the first point is that ICO is not a product per se. It's a service of Intersight. And it's the framework that enables and simplifies multi-vendor and multi-domain orchestration. So you have those tasks like Lego bricks, you put them together, and you create a workflow that matches your business need. The second point is about extensibility. So for sure, there will be stuff that we don't cover, right? Something that you're looking for, but we have no task for that. So we created a framework called Task Designer, where you can design your own tasks and make them reusable using third-party automation with some special tasks called executors. This leads us to the third point, which is about Brownfield Automation. So we know that everyone is already using automation. There are scripts, there are Ansible playbooks, Terraform code. You already have some stuff up and running, right? So you have the chance with ICO to kind of encapsulate this third-party automation and make it native within ICO. So abstract it within ICO in a way that could be reused multiple times for different use cases and workflows. So this is ICO in a slide. So you're going to go to the orchestration tab in Intersight, and you're going to create a new workflow. And this workflow is made by tasks. And those tasks are divided by domain, like virtualization, storage, compute, networking. You drag those things into the designer canvas. And obviously, you can also use operators or loops, for instance, conditional tasks to make it a little bit more dynamic, matching your business need. But again, and we kind of come to the main point of this session, there are also cases where you need to create some custom automation, right? There's that specific thing that we don't cover. And you do that, again, with custom tasks. And this is the focus for today's session. So once you've done with the task design, you build your own workflow. With workflow design, you build your workflow. You're going to save it. And we also provide validation and sanity checks, so we are kind of sure that the inputs are mapped correctly. You don't have infinite loops, these kind of things. All right, so this is ICO kind of from 10,000 feet. The task designer is where you create those custom tasks. So you create workflows in the workflow designer, so you can use those tasks again, like Lego bricks, and build your workflow. But this is where you create your custom automation, your custom tasks. And you use those special tasks called executors. So if you are familiar with other orchestrators, like UCS Director, for instance, you knew that to create custom automation, you have to code. You have to put some JavaScript code. This is not really what we are doing with ICO. We want to have a low to no code approach. So we have these 4 executors that are able to abstract each one of these technology targets. So you can have REST API calls. So you have to think as a wizard to build API calls, to invoke SSH commands, or to do scripts call out. Maybe you have some Python scripts. You want to call them out, pass some parameters, right? or you can encapsulate PowerShell scripts within ICO tasks, again, to be reusable. Or you can encapsulate Ansible playbooks. You can invoke those playbooks from ICO. And obviously, you can map those workflow inputs, which are basically the data point that the user is supposed to kind of fill in when they execute the workflow. You can map them to Ansible variables, scripts parameters, HTTP body, right? So this is where you basically go. And we're going to see that in a demo in a minute. Orchestration, tasks, task designer, create the task. So let's see that in action. All right, so let's suppose that I want to create a server profile for UCS, right? And I want to clone it out of a template. So I have a template. I want to clone the server profile. So I'm going to go ahead and create this workflow. This is the workflow designer. Create a workflow, and I'm going to look for template. OK, so I have that native task, new server profile from template. So I'm going to check the inputs, and it obviously is going to ask me for a template. But I don't have any. All right, so maybe that's the case where I want to look for a task that creates that templates in the first place. So I'm going to look for it, and we don't have it. Maybe we'll have it in the future, but we don't have it for today. So what I can do is to go ahead to the task designer and create that task. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new task. And I'm going to use the Web API Request Executor to execute calls against Intersight itself to create these templates. I'm going to connect to the start and success conditions. And I need to fill in some inputs. So in this case, I'm using a post, right? So you can see that as a wizard to create REST API calls, right? I'm going to fill in the URL, so fill in the kind of mandatory inputs, the body. Obviously, I know what to put in there, right? So I'm going to use the body and replace some variables coming from workflow inputs. And then I can use a response parser because Intersight is going to get back to me with data, and I want to extract the managed object ID of the resource I've just created. And this is how I do that with a response parser. I'm going to use JSON path syntax to extract that piece of information and map it to our outputs. So I'm going to give it a name, and this is going to be create a new server profile template. And then I'm going to go ahead and create some inputs. I want to give the user the chance to select its own template name, right? So I'm going to create a new task input, type string. It's going to be a required input. And then I'm going to create the managed object ID output, which is going to map to the response parser I created before. So this is how I map it. Managed object ID. This is very important for our rollbacks. This is something I'm going to show you. So I've now created the task to create a server profile template. I want to create a new one. And this time I want to create a task that deletes that server profile. Again, I'm going to use the Invoke Web API request. And for the inputs, this time I'm going to use a delete method. The URL, obviously it's a mandatory parameter. I know what is that. I'm replacing variables over there. Get to the properties. I'm going to give it a name. Once again, it's going to be the delete server profile template. And obviously, I'm also going to need the managed object ID of the resource I would like to delete. And this is where I'm going to create this task input. So I'm going to save it. And that's pretty much it. Very simple stuff. But now, let's head back to the create server profile template. I want to show you something about rollbacks. So if I go ahead and click on the properties, I can see that we have this enable rollback task switch. And I can select what is the rollback task for this specific action. And this is going to be the delete server profile template we just created. And you see that it's requiring the managed object ID, which is something I'm getting from the output of the previous execution. So I'm going to map it and save it, validates. So let's see them in action now. So we head back to our workflow designer, and now we're going to create this workflow that creates this server profile template. Now, if I look for those templates, I can see that I have those tasks. I created them, right? I created once, and I can reuse them forever. So I'm going to drag it here to the canvas. And then for the inputs, we have the inputs we created. Template name, right? I'm not going to go with a static value, because I want the user to select their own template name. So I'm going to create a workflow input and map it. Then I'm going to go ahead and save it. And now I'm the user persona. I'm going to execute it. So the system is going to ask me, all right, so what's going to be your template name? My Cisco Live Templates is the name. I'm going to go ahead and execute. And now it's success. So let's go to the templates and see what happens. All right, so I'm going to open a new tab and go and check the templates. And I can see my Cisco Live templates there. OK, so now let's deprovision this thing. I'm going to go ahead and click Rollback. And automatically, the system is going to pick the task, the rollback task I've assigned to the creation one. Rollback is success. As you can see here, refresh this page, and now my template is gone. That was a very, very simple example, but I hope it kind of resonates with you. All right, so yeah, now template's available now. All right, so now we've seen that we have 4 executors, right? So let's see when we can use those executors. So the Invoke Web Api Executor is the one we just used, right? So when are you going to use this? So obviously, when you don't have a native task and you need to create custom automation, and obviously your target needs to support RESTful APIs, otherwise it's quite useless, right? So there is a benefit that you get if you're targeting a target that you just claim natively in Intersight. For instance, if you claimed your Terraform Cloud organization, or your vCenter, or NetApp Storage, or Pure, Hitachi, whatever, there is a list of targets we support. When you're using the Invoke Web API request, you will make authenticated requests. So you don't need to take care about authentication, maintain the session up, and so on. So obviously, your kind of authentication method should be kind of the traditional way, or a simple authentication scheme. If you are targeting something that uses like request signing, these kind of things, probably you want to move forward and use another executor, because it's going to be too complicated to handle. So the other executor is the Ansible Playbook executor. So this is the perfect case when you already have Brownfield Automation. You have a lot of Ansible scripts all over the place, and you want to kind of consolidate and move away from this distributed set of scripts all over the place. You want to kind of manage them all from ICO and abstract them into reusable tasks. So if your playbooks support variables, that's great, because we can map to workflow inputs, right? So we can abstract that piece of orchestration perfectly. So if your target is a target which has like a rich Ansible kind of library and community support, that is also a good reason to use the Ansible Playbook executor. SSH and command script. There are mainly two use cases: execute a command, call out scripts residing to a target that you have to claim. So when would I use this SSH executor? Where probably as a last resort, right? Your target is a legacy one. You don't have any other kind of way to orchestrate against. There are no Ansible modules and so on. Or maybe when your automation is so simple, like I just have to execute that command, that anything else would be kind of overkill, right? PowerShell Executor. So there are some, obviously, when you already have PowerShell all around and you want to kind of, you don't want to refactor it. You're kind of good to go with PowerShell. You want to continue using PowerShell. An example would be like PowerCLI. It's a very, very powerful module. A lot of people are using it to orchestrate against VMware resources. So why refactor them? Right? You just can encapsulate it and abstract it within ICO. So your users will not have to take care about the scripts anymore. They will just have to drag this task and fill in the inputs. All right, so that was it for today. This is probably one of the last sessions for Cisco Live. So I'm going to fly back home very soon. Surveys, guys, I mean, No need to mention that these are super critical. Guys, there are absolutely no way for us to understand if these sessions are good for you if you don't submit feedbacks. I don't want to force you, but please do that, okay? All right, thanks a lot. Enjoy your rest of staying here.